The gloomy atmosphere of London in 1855, where black smoke from factories clung to the gray sky, mingling with the pungent stench from the polluted Thames River, enveloped the suffocating life of the middle class. The small, cold rooms without proper heating made each night for Elena pass in bitter cold and prolonged dry coughs. But amid this darkness, something even more suffocating was strangling her: the strict laws and rules of Victorian dating life. Elena, a 22-year-old girl, stood at the threshold of a life where every decision revolved around finding a suitable husband. With an elegant appearance and a gentle face, she was the pride of her family, but also the focus of invisible pressures. In this society, a glance held too long at a stranger, a casual touch, or an ill-timed word could turn into a terrible scandal, threatening the honor of a girl like Elena. Everything became more complicated when her family decided to hold a discreet ball, an occasion for her to be introduced to men of the upper class. That night, Elena wore a deep blue velvet dress, the dim gaslight highlighting the fragile but resolute look in her eyes. Every gesture, every word had to be perfect, as if she were acting in a play where no mistakes were allowed. In the parlor filled with formally dressed people, Elena was drawn into a conversation with a gentleman whose sharp eyes and mysterious smile set him apart. He was Lucian, a somewhat unknown figure, but one who possessed a strange charm, like a smoldering flame beneath the ashes of this harsh society. They spoke with carefully chosen words, but deep inside were questions full of curiosity about each other, about the secrets hidden behind polite faces. At that moment, whispers began to spread from a corner of the room, scrutinizing eyes and suspicious glances following Elena's every move. Another girl, Clara, her longtime close friend, suddenly turned cold, her eyes flashing with jealousy and envy upon seeing Elena close to Lucian. The relationship between the two friends grew tense like never before, an unrevealed mystery from the past suddenly rising, like a haunting ghost that could not be shaken off. Outside the ballroom door, the gloomy London night lurked with plots and secrets. The old walls concealed dark stories, from secret meetings of the elite class to shady dealings in the shadows. Elena realized that not only her honor and future were threatened, but even her life could be turned upside down by underground forces she had never fully understood. One wrong word, one careless gesture could make her prey to malicious rumors, cunning schemes, and ruthless struggles within society. She felt her heart gradually surrounded by unclear rules, by the deceit behind smiles and false vows. In the most thrilling moment of the night, when Elena decided to leave the room to breathe the cold air outside, she accidentally overheard a secret conversation between Lucian and a mysterious man. Words filled with threats and plans made her tremble as she realized that her dating life was not only a game of the heart, but also a mysterious and dangerous struggle for survival. Back in her room, Elena could not sleep peacefully. She understood that in this Victorian city, where rigid customs and rituals stifle the soul, every relationship held a secret, every smile could hide a plot. And above all, she, a young girl not yet 23 years old, had to find a way to survive alone amid the maze of harsh rules, jealousy, and ghosts from the past and present. Elena's dating story was not just an ordinary romantic tale, but an epic of courage, silent resistance, and the desire for freedom, in a world where marriage was not a choice, but a harsh destiny that had to be obeyed. And under the dim glow of gaslights, amid smoke-filled streets and the echoing sounds of Victorian London, Elena began her journey to find herself, stepping out of the shadows of rules to seek the light of truth and true love. Elena woke up in a small but tidy room, dim light filtering through a thick curtain covered in coal dust. The alarm bell rang sharply, pulling her out of a hazy dream about last night's encounters. Without hesitation, she had to quickly begin the strict preparation routine for a new day as a middle-class Victorian girl. The trusted maid waited quietly by the door, gentle but no less rigid, ready to help her into the thick, stiff corset that tightly squeezed her petite frame, shaping the hourglass figure, the beauty standard esteemed by society. The rapid breathing and suffocating feeling from the corset made Elena slowly get used to it, though every breath was labored. Layers of heavy clothing followed, each thick fabric covering her body, restricting any strong or comfortable movement. The low-heeled, stylish shoes were designed not for long walking, but for gentle steps inside rooms, hallways, and elegant party halls, places where she had to appear in her most perfect form. There was no truly private moment that belonged to Elena. The maid not only helped her dress, but closely monitored every step, watching every action to ensure she did not commit even the slightest mistake in the strict etiquette of society. The maid's presence was like an unceasing mirror, preventing her from relaxing or showing true feelings. Elena's makeup was very minimal. A light layer of white powder, finely drawn eyebrows, pale lips without lipstick, matching the standard of pure, modest beauty. Any prominence or sensuality was forbidden, as it would break the seriousness and cause questions about a girl's dignity. Therefore, Elena's beauty was a blend of innocence and solemnity, making her always the center of attention but never allowed to reveal her personality. During short breakfasts, Elena sat straight at the table, listening to the family's polite conversations while her mind still wandered about last night. Rules and complex relationships like a web surrounded her, threatening both her future and safety. Despite her calm appearance, she knew she had to prepare for increasingly difficult challenges ahead. Each day was a series of meetings, scrutinizing eyes and whispered words behind her back. Social relationships were built on calculation and scheming, leaving no room for natural emotions. Elena felt trapped in a nameless role, forced to maintain the perfect image of a Victorian middle-class girl, elegant, pure, and always preserving the family's reputation. Yet, in quiet moments alone in her room, she began to feel the fatigue and tension closing in. The heavy layers of fabric imprisoned not only her body, but also her soul. She longed for freedom, to live truly as herself, a desire suppressed by unshakable social prejudices. In the silent darkness, Elena knew only inner strength and wisdom could help her overcome harsh rules and the ghosts haunting Victorian dating and society. It was a journey full of conflict between the desire for freedom and responsibility, between endurance and the aspiration for change, where every step had to be carefully considered in the maze of honor and secrets. Days passed in the pressure-filled room and heavy dresses as Elena prepared to enter one of the most important rituals in a Victorian girl's life, the inspection meeting, organized by the prospective groom's family. It was not an ordinary date, but a strict selection process, where every gesture, word, and attitude was scrutinized under a microscope. At the formal afternoon tea, Elena was introduced to Henry, the son of a wealthy merchant family from the middle class. Henry spoke little, his gaze cold but sharp and observant. The meeting took place under the strict supervision of both parents, who kept their distance like unyielding judges, ready to judge every smallest detail about the girl. The first rule Elena was carefully instructed was not to accept any gifts from Henry, because without an engagement, receiving presents would be considered improper and could cause scandal for both families. She clearly remembered her mother's warning. Everything must be kept serious and proper to avoid misunderstandings. The room was tense with silence, the soft whispers of the adults around forming invisible walls that separated any closeness. Elena and Henry sat a few steps apart, without a single touch or a lingering glance. The rule of no touching unless permitted was immutable, meant to preserve the girl's reputation and maintain the seriousness of the meeting. The suffocating feeling made Elena want to take a deep breath, but her face remained composed and humble. Every word was carefully considered. Casual conversations about the weather or popular literary works became tools for her to demonstrate her education and dignity. But beneath the elegant cloak and gentle voice, Elena could not avoid curiosity and tension, as she realized this meeting was not merely a simple evaluation, but contained many schemes and intrigues. Every sideways glance, every suggestive question was like a sharp arrow, capable of revealing or hiding secrets, creating a complex social drama. As the tea gathering drew to a close, Henry tried to gently suggest a walk around the garden behind the house, where no parents watched. But Elena knew well that this was the final test. If she stepped into the garden, it would mean breaking the rules and risking a bad reputation. With a soft but firm smile, she declined and returned to the table, where the adults still watched with stern eyes. The refusal was not a sign of rigidity, but an expression of self-protection in a world full of invisible traps. On the way home, Elena felt clearly the weight of the strict rules pressing on her shoulders. It was not only a limitation of body or speech, but also pressure from judging eyes and invisible prejudices. Every step in her dating life had to be cautious, not allowed, even the smallest mistake. Those rules, seemingly just social norms, were actually walls separating Elena from true freedom and happiness. But she understood that to survive and exist in the Victorian world, she had to learn to maintain dignity and wisely navigate each step in the complicated maze of meetings, trials, and unspoken vows. Among thick layers of fabric, dim gaslight, and the ticking of old clocks, Elena began to realize that Victorian dating life was not a story about simple love, but a game full of cunning, where the heart and honor always faced the risk of being hurt and betrayed. She was no longer the innocent girl everyone saw, but a silent warrior, daily struggling between the desire for freedom and the harsh reality of society. Under the faint light of the large parlor, Elena and Henry continued their prolonged meetings, but every time there was always the presence of a chaperone, a stern middle-aged woman who sat in the corner, eyes never leaving them. Every conversation happened under strict supervision, with no room for private talks or intimate gestures. The chaperone's presence was not only part of the ritual, but also a barrier protecting the two from potential scandal. Elena knew well that in Victorian society, modesty was the greatest virtue of a young woman. She had to speak enough to show intelligence and knowledge, but never cross the line, avoiding making the other person feel threatened or offended. For a girl too smart might scare men away, and if too foolish, she would be despised. That required her to balance skillfully, sometimes like acting in a subtle play only women like her understood. In each meeting, Elena spent most of her time observing how Henry behaved with servants and his parents. She realized that small gestures, the way he talked to servants, the way he treated his mother and father, were the true measure of a man's character, not flowery words or glamorous appearance. Once, when Henry accidentally scolded a servant for spilling a small plate, Elena saw his eyes briefly lose control, making her tremble. The social conversations gradually grew cold, losing the warmth they once had. She began to question, was this man truly worthy of entrusting her life to? Afternoon teas were no longer just occasions for families to build relationships, but became psychological tests, carefully evaluating character. Elena learned to listen to subtle words, observe the smallest gestures, and even read Henry's eyes, to understand what he was thinking and hiding. Once, when Henry was tenderly caring for his ill mother, she noticed another side of him, the gentleness, the filial piety not everyone could show in a society full of rigid rules. That gave her a fragile hope amid doubts and calculations. But Elena could not forget the ever-present chaperone, who not only watched them but acted as a strict guardian, ready to intervene whenever there was a sign of crossing boundaries. Once, when Henry tried to ask about her personal interests in a more intimate tone, the chaperone quickly interjected with a polite question, making the atmosphere tense. The young woman realized that in Victorian dating, there was no room for naturalness or openness. Everything had to be carefully regulated, keeping proper form and etiquette. Continuous supervision not only prevented inappropriate actions, but also made every conversation artificial, like a perfectly staged play to avoid disappointment or mistakes. That made Elena feel lonelier than ever. Even standing in a crowd, she felt like a prisoner of invisible rules, unable to express true feelings or reveal herself. But she knew that if she wanted to find a worthy lifelong partner, she had to maintain patience, observation, and uphold her dignity. With each meeting, Elena gradually became more perceptive in reading people, knowing which signs were genuine and which were deceitful. She learned to use a gentle smile as armor, skillful words as a sword, to protect herself in a world where every step could be a trap. Amid heavy fabrics, watchful eyes, and strict rules, Elena still held a small flame within, a desire to find true love, a love based not only on rituals and prejudice, but on understanding and mutual respect. And though the path was full of challenges, she knew she would not stop until she found the light in the darkness of the Victorian era. The formal meeting between Elenina and Thomas was arranged by the family in her parlor, lasting exactly 1 hour. A brief time but filled with many expectations and strict rules. The supervisor did not take their eyes off every gesture, every word, ensuring everything proceeded within the framework of Victorian social etiquette. Every conversation began with light, polite topics carefully chosen so the other would not feel embarrassed or threatened. After the first meeting, with the family's permission, Thomas was allowed to call Elenina, a gesture of great significance, opening a new door in their relationship. Calls grew longer over time, and supervision was lessened as they were permitted to walk together, of course still under the watchful eye of a trusted chaperone. With each encounter, Elenina began to sense changes in their conversations. No longer dry social talks, they grew deeper as they shared about life, joys and sorrows, and past difficulties. Thomas spoke of pressures from family and work, secret desires he dared not tell anyone. Elenina opened up more about dreams, restrained by rules, and moments she felt tired, trapped in formal attire and responsibility. There were small but meaningful moments, like when Thomas noticed a servant bringing tea and gently helped her hold a heavy water pitcher, a small gesture showing care and respect for those who served, something not everyone in high society did. Or when they walked in the park under the pale gas lamps, a sudden noise from a closed shop made Thomas immediately turn to check, worried about Elenina's safety. Those moments revealed Thomas's true self, not just a gentleman who followed etiquette, but a warm man who knew how to care and protect. Gradually, Elenina felt safe with Thomas, a rare feeling in her life, full of strict rules and intense supervision. Their relationship was no longer just based on obligatory rituals, but began to have intimate silences, private shares belonging only to them. Caution was no longer the armor shielding all feelings, but was gradually replaced by trust and mutual understanding. However, both understood that the road ahead was still long and full of challenges. Pressure from family, society's scrutiny, and strict rules did not allow them to reveal themselves too quickly or let feelings develop naturally. Yet, within that caution and limitation, Elenina and Thomas found a deep empathy, like two souls restrained in the same old-fashioned world, striving together to break free and seek happiness. The first date and the following meetings became a challenging but precious journey for Elenina. She learned to see people not only through layers of etiquette and supervision, but through small, sincere actions, the true core of a lasting relationship in the complex and strict society of the Victorian era. One gentle spring day, Thomas officially came to meet Elenina's father in his solemn study, a private conversation that would decide the young woman's future. The atmosphere was tense, the exchanges were formal but serious. Thomas expressed his desire to formally propose to Elenina, affirming his sincerity and seriousness toward her. Elenina's father, who always valued family honor and tradition, listened attentively and finally agreed, trusting that Thomas was the right man to commit to his daughter for life. The moment of the official engagement marked a major turning point in Elenina's life. No longer were there strictly supervised meetings. They were allowed to walk together without a chaperone constantly nearby. Their hands were allowed to touch for the first time. A seemingly small act filled with meaning, a sign of trust and accepted intimacy. Love letters were exchanged, full of tender and sincere words, opening a new world, a world of love and deeper connection beyond the rigid social rules. However, engagement also meant responsibilities and preparations for a new life full of challenges. Wedding preparations began immediately, not only selecting a formal wedding dress, but also embarking on a journey to learn the skills of being a wife, an essential part of becoming a proper woman in Victorian society. Elenina attended classes taught by married women, where she learned how to manage the household, run the family, and the necessary etiquette for social communication. The wedding dress was chosen carefully. Every stitch had to be perfect, with no mistakes allowed. The tailor spent hours measuring and sewing each layer of fabric, creating an outfit that both expressed her pure beauty and maintained the noble and solemn style demanded by society. Elenina knew that this dress was not only a symbol of a significant day, but also a symbol of her maturity, acceptance of destiny, and new responsibilities. In addition, conversations with experienced women brought many practical lessons. They shared the difficulties of entering married life, from caring for husband and children, maintaining harmony in the family, to handling hidden conflicts delicately. Elela Nena listened carefully, remembering every word, knowing that wisdom and patience would be her weapons to overcome upcoming challenges. Though moments of hesitation and some worries arose, Elela Nena also felt the growth blossoming within herself. The relationship with Thomas was no longer a game of rituals and rules, but began to become a true connection, nurtured by trust and genuine affection. She understood that, no matter how difficult the road ahead, she was not alone. Always by her side was a man ready to accompany, share, and protect. Every preparation, from the smallest details to serious lessons, was a stepping stone for a new chapter in Elenena's life. A chapter of love, responsibility, and hopes for a brighter future within the strict social context of the Victorian era. Elenena's wedding day was held solemnly and ceremoniously, clearly reflecting the strict rules of Victorian society. She wore a handmade wedding dress made of many layers of pure white silk, combined with a corset tightened to the point that each step became heavy and difficult. Every movement was like a slow dance, showing pure beauty and symbolizing the sacrifice and responsibility she was about to bear. The ceremony took place in an ancient church where flickering candlelight mixed with chanting created a sacred and solemn atmosphere. Both families, along with hundreds of close guests and distinguished middle-class people, were present to witness this important moment. Elela Nena entered the hall, her eyes shining, but deep inside mixed with excitement and anxiety. She knew this was not only a happy day, but also the beginning of a new challenging journey. Married life afterward was the time Elela Nena gradually adapted to the role of head of the household, a great responsibility society placed on women. She was taught how to manage finances, oversee household staff, and maintain her home in harmony and order. Each passing day was a valuable lesson, from organizing housework to the art of communication and maintaining harmony with her husband and extended family members. Thomas, her husband, always showed patience and respect, never pressuring or rushing her into the intimate aspects of marriage. Their affection developed slowly through gentle words and small but sincere gestures. This made Elela Nena feel secure and valued, a luxury amid the strict rules and social pressures weighing heavily. Marriage was more than a relationship between two people. It was a deep sharing through real challenges. When Thomas suffered from a prolonged illness, Elela Nena never left his side, caring for and supporting him through the days of pain. Conversely, when she faced pressures managing family and society, Thomas was always there to listen, support, and offer wise advice. Together, they overcame difficulties from work, family issues, and society's endless expectations. Each challenge was an opportunity to understand one another better, strengthen their bond, and build a solid foundation for their home. Their harmony was not merely the result of rituals and rules, but a testament to love nurtured by patience, respect, and understanding. In the early days of their life together, Elela Nena gradually sensed spiritual freedom, no longer alone in the maze of harsh laws. She found firm support in Thomas's arms, a man who was not only her husband, but also a life partner and companion through every step. Heavy wedding dresses, tight corsets, formal ceremonies, all seemed lighter as Elela Nena stepped through the door of married life, opening a new chapter filled with hope, challenges, and true love within the complex context of Victorian society. After the challenging early years of marriage, Elela Nena and Thomas entered a new phase, when children's laughter began to fill the home rich with memories and responsibilities. Having children brought boundless joy but also great challenges, forcing them to face profound changes in daily life. Becoming parents meant sharing time, energy, and care skillfully between raising children and maintaining marital closeness. Each day, Elela Nena learned to balance sleepless nights beside the small cradle with managing the household, while Thomas tried to secure work and support his wife in every possible way. Despite fatigue and stress, they always kept understanding and patience for each other, qualities that helped them overcome inevitable family hardships. No longer formal tea parties or society's watchful eyes, simple, intimate moments together became the most precious value. Thomas often spent time talking with Elena after their child fell asleep, sharing secret thoughts they rarely expressed before. They learned to listen, understand, and find solutions together, from child rearing to keeping peace at home. Their love was not a raging fire, but a small lamp persistently burning through days, nurtured by respect and patience. Every challenge overcome, every child's smile, every warm handhold contributed to building a lasting relationship that rose above Victorian customs and rules. Though busy, Elena and Thomas kept small but meaningful habits, walking together in the park on weekends or sharing favorite books on quiet evenings. These simple acts renewed their affection, keeping their relationship fresh and full of life. Facing difficulties, they did not choose silence or avoidance, but used understanding and respect as the foundation to build a bridge between their souls. Love did not come from fleeting passions, but resulted from care, persistence, and walking together in all circumstances. Through years of living together, Elena and Thomas were not only spouses, but close friends and allies in life, sharing joys and bearing hardships. They proved that in a society full of strict laws and pressures like Victorian times, a lasting marriage was no easy matter, but the fruit of courage, patience, and genuine love nurtured over time. In the dim light of the Victorian era, the strict rules and rigid limits in the courtship and marriage process were not merely constraints, but created a special space where two people could gradually get to know, understand, and build mutual trust. Although many modern people view them as cumbersome and outdated, it was precisely this carefulness that gave couples the opportunity to look deeper into each other's true nature, beyond social masks and complex formalities. Victorian courtship resembled a slow and deliberate dance, where every step was carefully calculated to avoid mistakes and hurt. Every meeting, every conversation took place under clear supervision and rules designed to protect both parties from rash decisions or misunderstandings that could lead to lifelong suffering. Limits on physical contact, formal rituals, and the balance between displaying intellect and humility were not meant to suppress affection, but to ensure respect and appreciation for one another. It was within these limited spaces that subtle glances, small gestures, and actions revealing character were truly expressed. People did not judge only by appearance or flowery words, but also by how one treated servants, family, and everyday situations, where true character was most easily revealed. This created a solid foundation for trust and genuine love, not based on fleeting emotions or temporary passion. Unlike modern dating, often quick and full of emotional outbursts, Victorian courtship was built on patience, respect, and a deep insight into the other person. It was a journey of understanding with a clear purpose, a lifelong commitment transcending social and temporal challenges. In that era, love and marriage were not just the union of two individuals, but also the merging of two families, two sets of values, and long-standing traditions. Therefore, every step had to be carefully considered so that no one would suffer from haste or ignorance. It was this slowness and deliberation that created durable relationships, helping couples build a solid foundation for their future life together. Elena and Thomas, despite experiencing strict limits and rules, gradually explored each other with caution and respect, from supervised meetings to engagements and the challenging married life. They were not only rule followers, but also life partners who listened, understood, and accompanied each other through all circumstances. Their courtship process, like a solemn dance, helped them bond more deeply than any passionate outburst in life. Today, looking back, we can see that those old rules were not merely impositions, but also a form of protection, a method to help people build meaningful and lasting relationships. The carefulness in every step was not to restrain, but to nurture, so that two hearts not only love each other, but also understand and respect one another, something many modern dating relationships sometimes lack. Through the story of Elena and Thomas, we realize that no matter how society changes, the values of respect, patience, and understanding in love remain the strongest foundation for a lasting and truly happy marriage. The Victorian courtship and marriage process, with all its strictness and rituals, remains a valuable lesson on how to build relationships based on a balance between emotion and reason, between freedom and responsibility.